Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Magicians. A great episode. Obviously picking up where last week's episode left off with Penny being quote-unquote dead. I did kind of somewhat get it right about the whole, him astral projecting when he died and everything. Wasn't a defense mechanism or anything. It's just, he was still astral projected while the whole surgery by Astaroth was going on, and because of that, I guess because when you astral project, it kind of emits all of your consciousness and your soul. I guess everything that's kind of you, it's there. I would assume more so the soul aspect, so that's why he's not completely dead, because he's also in that weird plane of existence, because they were also looking for Penny's soul later on, and they're like, yeah, his soul can't be found. It's like, oh, because his soul's stuck on the astral plane, so that kind of makes that make a little more sense. I guess when I always thought of astral projection, I guess I never really thought of it as your soul. I always thought like, oh yeah, it's just you projecting like some mystical version of yourself. I thought it was like, purely magic, but obviously it exists without that, but outside the realm of magic, I guess because it is your own soul. Nevertheless, diving too deeply into that. But I do love the fact is that this episode is all about Penny being like, what the fuck? No one is sad about me being dead. Even going as far as like when Quentin hears it, he starts laughing. Even Penny's like, wait, what? And then Quentin's like, when you have this like inappropriate reaction, it's like, he's sad, but it's just kind of like, it's just everyone grieves in their own way. But Penny was just so upset because, like, is no one going to say anything or even cry about me being dead? It's because the fact of the matter is no one knows Penny. Even Quentin was like, honestly, I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. And even Katie's like, the fact is Penny kept herself disconnected. No one knew anything about him. No one really knew him. And he liked it that way. And it's like, yeah, it kind of put things in perspective. It's almost like a Scrooge situation. In a twisted sense, I never even thought about when I was watching the episode, but now it's kind of like almost like a Scrooge situation of, oh, look at all the people that quote unquote care about you don't really know jack squat about you and everything. Because in retrospect, I was like, right, we don't know diddly squat about Penny. Even like Margot and Elliot, you pick up stuff about them as the show is going on, but it's like, overall, like, I don't remember diddly squat about Penny's personal life, because he's always played that stuff close to the vest. He doesn't get attached or get close to people. Even Katie, who out of any person in this series, he actually likes her. Well, he likes Alice too, but still. Those are like the only two people we have a good idea of like, oh, he actually cares about these people, so it's just kind of interesting. I even love his reaction with like Margot. It's like Margot was like, oh my God, Penny's dead? I always thought that, that we'd bang. And you have Penny be like, I know, right? Me too, girl. Me too. It's like that reaction. I love it. And even the map maker, his name's Benedict. He's like, yeah, he was my best friend. And Penny's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Because it's like, even I'm like, yeah, like, you literally talked to Penny one time last episode during the whole Lorien situation of them making the castle disappear. Like, that's the only time you two ever had any interaction at all last season, if I'm remembering correctly. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden you're best friends and stuff like that. I mean, he did a favor with the whole Moss situation, helping Penny track it down and stuff like that, drew him a map and everything. But it's like, I don't know, maybe that's just because the map maker, Benedict, doesn't have that many friends. Maybe that's why, but it's actually kind of sad just seeing him kind of pop all over the place. But I do appreciate the fact that he met Hyman, the perverted ghost. He's been hanging around since like the 1920s, because basically he did this all the time because he's a traveler too, and he would like pervert on people, watch them and stuff like that, in particular ladies. And because of that, someone got so fed up with him, even because he was warned multiple times, and they moved his body and he just never got back to his body. So his body probably was off somewhere and just died. I was halfway expecting him to, at some point during the episode, to try and possess Penny's body. I mean, that could always be something that happens in the future. But he also brought up the fact as of why Penny can't even possess his own body. Because it's like, oh yeah, you can possess your body, but it's just like, your body's dead, so you going inside of a dead thing is just going to lead to you being dead. Which reminds me with the whole conversation about possession, it's him possessing Margot's like golem, and even Todd being like, oh, I don't keep it for sexual reasons, which is, it's like, oh, I keep it because it's like I dress it up a little bit and, make it pretend like she respects me. I'm like, that's sad. Like the whole sex doll thing, it's weird and creepy, but it's like, okay, it's like, it's still super weird and creepy, but it's like, oh, you don't even use it for sex. It's like, I use it to pretend like she respects me. It's like, That's so sad. Your self-esteem is that low, Todd. Maybe fair, Todd's just kind of like a, I want people to like me type of thing. So that was just incredible. I even like this about Hyman too, because Hyman's kind of like, oh yeah, I've been watching you guys since you got here, like in Break Bills. That's how he's like, I know all of you. He's like, the people he likes in particular is Quentin and Julia, and it's like, oh man, Pete, they've been friends for so long. He's secretly been in love with her just as long, which kind of popped in my mind too. And I'm like, yeah, they should get together, shouldn't they? That might be the direction they take the show. I mean, Julia hasn't been in a relationship in a while. The last relationship she was in season 1. But after everything that kind of went down, maybe Julia really isn't about relationships. But then again, it's like, it does seem like she's doing better this season, especially with the whole Reynard situation. Everything kind of played out the way it did. So I think her need for revenge, she kind of let it go. So, and plus the fact is, like, you could tell they gel so well together. I mean, just because they're good friends doesn't mean they make a good couple. But also at the same time, it's like, well, where him and Alice stand in the current situations, because like, I don't know if that would necessarily be, it just makes you wonder where that whole situation is going to lie. I always thought it'd be kind of interesting for him and Julia to kind of get together. Because even like back in season 1, Quentin pointed out to her, it's like, yeah, you've always known how I felt about you, but you've always kind of, in a sense, always kind of friend-zoned me in a sense. But nevertheless, but the fact is that he's taking an interest in, he's like, oh yeah, Quentin, it's almost like, he didn't say this exactly, but like how I kind of interpret it, it's kind of like him being like, Quentin is like the main protagonist of this little story I'm watching unfold. He almost treats it like a television show. I'm like, oh my God, like, oh, listening in on the conversations and stuff like that. It's like, oh wow, that's crazy. All these new developments. And also involves creeping on people too, because even Penny was like, what does it following the story have to do with the fact is that you're creeping on Julia while she's taking a bath? She's like, well, I don't want to miss anything. I was like, you are a pervert. Which, to be fair, Todd's even more of a pervert in his eyes because of the whole Margot Golem situation. But nevertheless, I almost skipped over it too. Was the fact is that Penny tried to possess it and tried talking, but like Quentin lost his shit and just like beat it down and kept beating. I guess he beat it to death. Just because you just hear him screaming the entire time he's whacking it too, because it's just like, I guess he was scared of like a zombie moment and everything. So I thought that was just I love that and thought it was kind of interesting. What's also interesting too is like they kind of laid everything down about like, because obviously in the series we've only had one introduction of Ghost, and that was during the whole situation back in season 1, that house that was possessed. They've still never gone back and fixed that situation. Now that they referenced it in this episode, but they didn't ever go back and fix that. Was the whole aspect of like, well, Ghost, like, oh, you relive your death. Well, have you been reliving your death, Hyman? He's like, no. He's like, okay, then you're not a ghost. But he's like, well, then how you explain all the fact is I don't just fall through the floor. The fact of the matter is, like, if I sit down somewhere, I just actually sit down. He's like, dude, I don't know. Stop trying to break the fourth wall and get me to explain things. They are what they are. So, but Penny trying over and over again to try and get people to understand his situation, find out he's still alive, because for him it's like the library knows about his situation of he's dead, but the fact of the matter is he's supposed to serve them after death, but they can't find his soul and everything. So hence like they're trying to get like a God, what did they call him? Right, a corpse eater, because it's like that way Penny's soul could be at rest, because if it's kind of stuck in between, eventually he'll become a vengeful ghost type of situation. But it's like you get a corpse eater to eat his body, then his soul can rest and stuff like that, which puts Katie in that situation of like she doesn't know what to do. Also, interestingly enough, was Penny witnessed it, that Julia got a tip from somebody that was like, go save her, she's in trouble, she needs you. Because when Penny saw it though, whatever it was like a green light shining down on Todd's body when he's being possessed. So it might be the same thing as that lady that was talking to her last episode of like, oh, we're trying to get you to see the signs. The question is, why did they help her save Katie? I guess because Katie's important with this whole situation. Maybe because like they're all crucial to this whole tracking down 7 keys. Maybe they need Julia to do that. I don't know. But Julia hasn't told anyone about it. Like Penny's the only one that noticed that. He's like, what is up with that? That's why I was thinking like, oh, that had to be like, I thought that was Hyman who had done that, but I was like, no, because they can't possess people, because they can't possess things with brains, because it kind of gets a little trippy and everything. I also love Penny's line of being like, whoa, when'd you get this boat, Margot? Man, I always miss out on the cool shit. It's like, yeah, you missed out on a lot of stuff because you've been off kind of working with the library and stuff like that. To be fair, he kind of missed out on a lot of stuff that went down in Fillory last season, just because of kind of bouncing all over the place, trying to help with the whole revenge against Reynard and everything. So, and since I'm on that subject too, like, bouncing around. It's interesting to find out about the Netherlands. That the fact of the matter is that they are the way they are because there's no magic. All the wells to different worlds are like clogged, or have frozen over. So if you were stuck in the Netherlands, you were screwed. There's no getting back to your world or any other world. Hence, Penny's like the only person that can travel like that, except for the bunnies that Elliot and Fillory uses to kind of communicate with everyone. But that's just so interesting to think about that. I'm surprised he isn't like a commodity, Maybe travelers are in high demand because it's like there's no way to get around magically unless you have a traveler. And even then, they can only teleport in like one person at a time anyway, so. But still, that's still a hot commodity in the sense of a world where there is no magic. A really interesting development about this episode, too, is the fact is we learn, it was kind of an interesting fact, is that each one of the 7 keys apparently has a different ability. Because the first key that Elliot has the ability to create illusions, while the second key holds the power of revealing truths and everything. I thought that was kind of interesting. There was that whole situation at Irene's house really quickly. I was like, are they really going to tell her about the keys, or the fact of the matter is the whole like aspect of like Julia having magic? But then you had Quentin being like, oh yeah, actually he might have some residual magic and stuff like that. I'm like, what's that about? I was like, is Julia going to pretend like it's Quentin performing the magic when it's actually her? But then again, it's like she can't perform any big enough magic to make it look like that way. So I was like, what's going on there? It's like, no, Quentin was meant to be a distraction because it was something I was concerned about too. It's like the last thing you want is more people to know about Julia's magic. And I guess even Henry kind of agreed because even he was like, he was kind of okay with the whole plan. But like around Irene's house, she's got like all these, it's like, oh, these enchantments and everything. Like, sadly, these enchantments are dying out, but she still has some because like they're based on some residual family that her grandfather had set up in place or whatever like that. On some residual magic, which never went into it too much about like where that residual magic was stored from. But the moment Julia picked up the key, because Penny kept seeing it, he's like, what the hell is that? Like, it seems like Penny can see magic, or maybe he can see shades or something, because it might be more so magic, because when he saw Julia, he saw like a bright light, but everything else that was like sweeping and stuff like this, something right out of Fantasia. Penny saw a light with it, and in the moment Julia picked up the key, it's like, oh, those aren't just like, that's not magic, just magic he's seeing. Those are freaking fairies. So it's like her family has imprisoned fairies and kind of have them as slaves, essentially. I was like, that's so interesting. And because to be fair, like, you can't normally see fairies, like, unless they want you to see them, they can't be seen. So maybe that's what the whole point is, like, they're on the lock and key, and it's so. I wonder, does the Queen of Fairies know about that? Could this be something that she's ultimately aiming for, trying to retrieve some of her people? The fact of the matter is, it's like, oh yeah, some of the magic is dying out, is what she's saying. Is that some excuse to hide the fact is that if it kept on going forever, it'd look a little suspicious? So was she lying? Or is it the fact of the matter is that eventually in this world without magic, maybe fairies being imprisoned, that eventually they starve to death because they are, being treated as slaves, which kind of makes Irene and her entire family super messed up. I mean, to be fair, like Lance, the dude who originally got the key from back in the day, his father ended up killing him just because he was gay. And it's like, oh, you're trying to blame this on the key to making this come out. This essentially your own proclivities or your fault, and strangled him. It's like, that sucks. It's also interesting too, because ghosts do relive like their whole depths and everything. It is interesting that whole cycle can be messed with a little bit, because Penny got on top of the guy and started beating on him a little bit, and he's like, say my name. It's like, what is your name? He's like, that's not a real name. No, it's not. Because, so I just thought that was just kind of interesting how that can exist like that. And also the fact is that the only people that can see them in their traveler spectrum world is Ghost. I wonder why. Maybe it's kind of like has to do with like a frequency or parallel world type of thing, where it's like the fairies exist on one world or one realm. I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing too, because it's like, well, because the fairies world kind of lives on a different frequency than Fillory, so maybe the same thing applies on the Earth realm, where they exist on a different frequency, because even Penny in his state couldn't see them. So it makes you wonder, could a ghost be able to see a fairy in those states? I don't know. Maybe they're so condensed down into magic that you wouldn't be able to see their true forms. I don't know. But it's just kind of an interesting thing. So maybe ghosts exist on a similar frequency as the traveler frequency where their souls are and everything. So, but what's also an interesting thing about that is too, when Julia picked it up, she was like, yeah, it kind of made me feel weird. I was like, that's interesting. That's super interesting, because whatever her situation is, it was kind of bubbling to the surface, and she didn't like the way it made her feel. So she put the key down to me. Like, she's like, yeah, it made me kind of feel not me. And I was like, oh, that tinting to whatever it is that she is. Maybe whoever is giving her the signs, that green light, whoever they are, is trying to get her to collect the 7 keys because it's connected to her. Maybe it's like, once she get all 7 keys combined with whatever she is, she can, I mean, the fact of the matter is we're bringing back magic, but maybe it's more than that. Maybe whatever it is that's connected to Julia is dead. It's dead since it can possess people. Maybe it wants Julia to bring them back. Maybe they exist on a different frequency, kind of like the fairies. And so that's what that's all about, which I'll kind of have to wait and see. But, speaking of the fairies, it is kind of interesting when you hear Margot's lines about, like, basically it's like, oh, I'm gonna cut the queen's heart out and eat it in front of everyone. It's like, whoa. Even Penny was kind of surprised, like, whoa, when you put your mind to it, you get shit done. So, because Margot's just not in a plain mood, because she's tired of all this manipulation and being controlled by the fairies and everything. So, I'm curious to see how far she'll kind of act upon that. She will need Benedict's and Tech's help with the whole situation, though, so. And what would that mean if the fairy queen did die? Would that stop the other fairies? Or, how would the whole hierarchy situation with someone else become the next queen? I don't know. And then there's also Elliot, Faye, and Finn's situation. Elliot sadly eating some human because they ended up coming across some cannibals who were feasting on a librarian, which is kind of super sad. The moment they said, I was like, oh, don't tell me it's like Zelda and this. It's like, no, Zelda and the others are still hidden away. I guess it's just one straggler librarian that might have been off on their own that kind of got lost. Part of me was, well, I was, for whatever reason, just now I was thinking, like, could it be Sylvia's body? But it's like, no, because she was in the poison room, so there's no way they would have gone after her. That would have, and I doubt they would want to eat her body considering the condition her body was in. Which I'm surprised that storyline hasn't circled back around. Because because the way they were setting it up made it seem like it was something else. But maybe it's just kind of a through line to kind of get Penny into the poison room and kind of put him in a situation that he's in right now with being sick and everything. So maybe that was the whole point of it. I still feel like they're going to circle back to that in some shape or form. Especially like the whole aspect of her dad and everything. Him being quote unquote businessman or whatever. So... But the fact of the matter is, Elliot's like, okay, I'll distract these cannibals by creating a shadow monster. And it's like, nope, the illusionary key creates illusion of what you fear the most. And in Elliot's case, that was his dad. And it's just, even Penny was like, man, you probably have it the worst. Because even he's like, why is everyone in, this particular episode, what's up with everyone and their daddy issues today? Because there's Quentin with his dad issues and his Alice with her dad issues and that whole situation. But... I love that later on when Elliot's explained it. He's like, oh yeah, my dad, yeah, I ended up feeding him to the cannibals. You did what? It's like, don't worry. I fed the illusion of my dad to the cannibals. He's like, actually, it was kind of a little satisfying. I was like, that's super dark and twisted. And there's also that thing about Alice being like, well, the fact of the matter is, Penny, if he goes to the underworld and everything, it's like Quentin says there's a bowling alley and you have all those books. And it's like, oh, yeah, it sounds like a nice place to me. And even Penny's like, come on, Alice, basically, like, we're supposed to be homies. Don't kind of throw me under the bus like that, like trying to send me off to a place like that. Which, interestingly enough, that was kind of an interesting thing. She doesn't remember what her shade remembers. Her shade was in the underworld, but I guess that all those memories don't translate. So any time, like any conversation she had with Quentin, maybe that's why it didn't translate back to Alice per se, like that her shade is the one that wanted to come back and everything. Just because once your shade joins you again, like anything it experienced on its own, it's just a fraction of who you were. So maybe it disappeared the moment it fused back with Alice. So that was just kind of an interesting thing. Like, she didn't remember anything like that. So, I mean, to be fair, maybe she didn't get like a full blown scale, a full blown look at the underworld, but it just, the way she sounded like she didn't know anything about it. So, I don't know. Maybe it could be either way, but I think I'm leaning more towards like she just forgot the moment they fused back together. But I also appreciate the end of the episode, especially how it was done, where it's like Elliot picks up the key. He's like, oh, yeah, it probably doesn't work for me. Oh, hey, Penny. And Penny's like, wait. And it does, almost mid-sentence, like, hard cut to credits. I was like, that was so beautifully done. It's just like a last minute, oh, hey, Penny. Wait, what? Hard cut to credits. That was so beautifully done. kind of leaving off on the biggest cliffhanger you can leave off on for an episode in that particular situation. I thought that was so beautifully done, especially considering the fact is Penny had to burn his body. Maybe him doing what he did stopped Katie from sending him to a corpse eater or whatever, or completely burning his body. Maybe him setting his body on fire kind of gave him more time to make Katie go, oh my God, like something's up here because Penny gave us a sign or whatever, so. Or his body is completely gone and he's just kind of screwed in that apartment. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm also curious to see what this whole situation means for Faye, because now she knows there's more to this whole situation. Like, Elliot still hasn't explained it to her, but she's like, you said you were up here collecting taxes. It's not the case. Like, what are these keys for? What are these keys for? So that's not going to be good. Oh yeah, and almost completely forgot the fact of the matter is Irene's family was, is on the board and everything. So basically, because nothing was brought to them about this whole magic situation, like reviving magic or whatever, because I guess that whole Mayakovsky situation is still kind of up in the air too. So don't know about the rest of his batteries or whether he already used them or whatever. That's a situation we haven't cut back to. But because of that whole situation, Break Bills is being shut down. So it's like, what does that mean for everyone at the school? Like, does that mean them going back to normal lives or whatever? Because I almost completely forgot, because it was something I wanted to bring up earlier too, was the whole aspect of like Alice being like, oh yeah, I don't want magic back, because it's like, I just want to be able to make mistakes and be the 23-year-old I am. Because it's like, well, look at your case. It's like, because it's kind of interesting because he brought up his dad's cancer, which we haven't touched that storyline since like back in season 1 when he revealed to his dad what he can do. But the fact is that his dad's cancer is a kind of bit of magic. So with magic going, he's in remission, which is kind of like, holy shit, like what's up with that? Is that supposed to mean that someone is out there putting cancer in people with magic? And it seems like it's not like godlike magic, because whatever it is connected to like the wellspring type of magic, considering it's his dad's cancer's going in remission. So I was like, that's super messed up when you actually break that down and think about it like that. So it's like, oh, Quint wants to bring back magic, but that would also involve making his dad sick again and just calling him all kinds of messed up in that regard. So I don't know, but like I said, I'm curious about that, as well as just where, like the whole break bills thing, like where does everyone go from here? What about all the resources? It's like, well, the fact is someone else is going to be owning it. So the question is who, I don't know. Like I said, so many questions. Like I said, overall, a great episode. I'm so interested to see what goes down in the next episode with this, especially continuing with this whole Penny situation. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good